I'll never forget the phone call I received on a cold Tuesday morning in March. My mother's voice was trembling on the other end. "Your father fell again." This time he couldn't get up. My heart sank. This was the third fall in 2 months, and each time it seemed like a piece of my dad's independence was slipping away. The man who used to carry me on his shoulders, who built our entire deck by himself at age 55, who never missed a day of work in 40 years, was now struggling to climb a single flight of stairs. He was only 63 years old. When I rushed to the hospital that day, I saw something in my father's eyes that terrified me more than any diagnosis ever could. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was resignation. He had accepted that this was just what happened when you got older. Your muscles disappeared, your strength vanished, and your independence slowly died. But here's what neither he nor I knew at that moment. He was suffering from a condition that affects nearly half of all men over 60, and it's not just about aging. It's called sarcopenia, and it's literally eating away your muscle tissue as you sleep, as you sit, as you live your daily life. The most shocking part, most doctors won't even test for it until you're already experiencing severe symptoms. By then, you might have already lost up to 30% of your muscle mass. But what I discovered over the next 6 months changed everything. Not just for my father, but for dozens of men in our community who were facing the same silent epidemic. And it all started with a breakfast that sounds almost too simple to be true. Before I tell you exactly what this breakfast is and why it works so incredibly well, I need you to understand what's really happening inside your body right now if you're a man over 60. Because once you see the mechanism, once you understand the science, you'll realize why this isn't just another health fad or empty promise. This is about biology, about how your body has been programmed to survive, and how modern life has triggered a catastrophic malfunction in that programming. Sarcopenia is the medical term for age-related muscle loss, but that clinical definition doesn't capture the reality of what it does to your life. Imagine your muscles as a bank account. Every decade after 30, you start making automatic withdrawals. 3 to 5% of your muscle mass, gone. Just like that. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. After 60, those withdrawals accelerate. Some studies show men can lose up to 15% of their muscle mass per decade after 60. That's not just about looking less muscular in the mirror. That's about struggling to open a jar. That's about feeling unsteady on your feet. That's about losing the ability to play with your grandchildren, or maintain your home, or live independently. My father's doctor had told him it was just part of getting older and prescribed some light exercise and a generic diet plan. 3 months later, Dad was weaker than ever. He'd followed the advice religiously. He walked every day. He cut down on red meat. He ate what he thought was a healthy breakfast: oatmeal with banana and a glass of orange juice. And yet, his legs felt like they were made of paper. His grip strength had declined so much he couldn't hold his coffee cup without 2 hands. Something wasn't adding up. That's when I started digging into the research myself, and what I found made my blood boil. There are over 17,000 scientific studies on sarcopenia. 17,000. And buried in those studies was a solution so elegant, so well documented, that I couldn't believe it wasn't being shouted from every rooftop. The problem wasn't that my father was eating too much or too little. The problem was when he was eating certain nutrients and in what combination. His muscles were literally starving for specific amino acids at the exact moment they needed them most, and his healthy breakfast was making everything worse. Here's what nobody tells you about muscle loss after 60. It's not gradual, it's episodic. You lose muscle in chunks, often after periods of inactivity or illness. And if you don't intervene with the right nutritional strategy within a specific window, that muscle loss becomes permanent. Your body goes into a state called anabolic resistance, which means even when you eat protein, your muscles can't use it efficiently. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes in it. You can pour in all the water you want, but you're fighting a losing battle unless you plug those holes first. The breakfast that changed everything for my father contains 3 key components, and the timing of when you eat them is just as important as what they are. But before I reveal exactly what this breakfast looks like, I need to explain why the standard breakfast most men over 60 are eating is actually accelerating their muscle loss. Because if you're eating the wrong breakfast right now, everything else you do during the day, all the exercise, all the good intentions, won't matter nearly as much as it should. Most men over 60 start their day with one of 3 breakfasts: cereal with milk, oatmeal with fruit, or toast with eggs. These seem healthy enough, right? Your doctor probably hasn't told you to stop eating them. But here's the metabolic disaster that's unfolding inside your body with each of these breakfasts. When you eat high-carbohydrate foods first thing in the morning, especially refined carbs or even healthy whole grains without the right protein balance, you trigger a massive insulin spike. That insulin spike doesn't just affect your blood sugar. It fundamentally alters how your body processes protein for the next 6 to 8 hours. When your insulin is elevated from that carb-heavy breakfast, your muscles become resistant to the anabolic signals that tell them to grow and repair. It's called the carbohydrate-induced anabolic block, and while your body is busy shuttling all that glucose into your cells, it's ignoring the protein you might eat later. Even worse, high insulin levels activate something called the ubiquitin-proteasome system, which is literally the mechanism your body uses to break down muscle tissue. So that bowl of oatmeal you thought was heart-healthy might be telling your body to cannibalize your own muscles. But the cereal and milk combo isn't much better, even though it has protein from the milk. The problem is the type and amount of protein combined with the sugar from the cereal. You're getting maybe 8 grams of protein if you're lucky, and it's casein protein, which digests slowly. That might sound like a good thing, but in the morning, after an overnight fast, your muscles need a rapid influx of specific amino acids, particularly leucine, to trigger muscle protein synthesis. Casein is like a slow drip for when you need a direct injection. Meanwhile, the sugar in the cereal is creating that same insulin spike that blocks the protein from being used effectively anyway. Now, what about eggs and toast? This is closer to what you actually need, but it's still missing critical components. Eggs are fantastic, one of the best protein sources available. But most men only eat 2 eggs, which gives you about 12 grams of protein. Research shows that men over 60 need at least 30 grams of high-quality protein in their first meal to overcome anabolic resistance and trigger muscle protein synthesis. 2 eggs isn't enough. When you pair those eggs with toast, you're once again introducing that carbohydrate-insulin problem that undermines the protein's effectiveness. So what did I discover in all those research papers? What was the breakfast that seemed almost too simple but was backed by study after study showing remarkable results? It came down to 3 principles: protein threshold, amino acid composition, and nutrient timing. The breakfast needed to contain at least 30 grams of protein. That protein needed to include at least 3 grams of the amino acid leucine, which is the master switch for muscle protein synthesis. And it needed to be consumed within 1 hour of waking up, when your muscles are most receptive to growth signals after the overnight fast. But here's where it gets really interesting. The research also showed that adding certain compounds to this high-protein breakfast could enhance the muscle-building effect dramatically. We're talking about a 50 to 70% improvement in muscle protein synthesis compared to protein alone. These weren't exotic supplements or expensive powders. These were simple, whole food ingredients that you can buy at any grocery store. And when combined in the right way, at the right time, they created a synergistic effect that researchers were calling remarkable and clinically significant. The breakfast I prepared for my father that first morning looked like this: 4 whole eggs scrambled with spinach and mushrooms, a cup of full-fat Greek yogurt mixed with a handful of blueberries and a tablespoon of ground flaxseed and a small sweet potato on the side. He looked at the plate skeptically. "This is a lot of food," he said. "I'm usually fine with just my oatmeal." I explained what I'd learned about the protein threshold, about the leucine, about the insulin response. He agreed to try it for a week. The first morning after that breakfast, he didn't notice much, except that he felt fuller longer. He didn't get that mid-morning energy crash he usually experienced. The second day, same thing. But by the third day, he mentioned something that caught my attention. "I felt steadier going down the stairs this morning," he said. "I didn't want to get my hopes up. It could have been psychological, a placebo effect." But I encouraged him to keep going. By the end of the first week, the changes were undeniable. He was moving with more confidence. He went for his usual walk and told me it felt easier, like his legs had more spring in them. But I'm a skeptic by nature, and I needed more than just my father's subjective experience. So I had him do something simple: the sit-to-stand test. This is a clinical test where you sit in a chair and stand up and sit down as many times as you can in 30 seconds. It's a validated measure of leg strength and functional fitness. Before starting this breakfast routine, my father could barely manage 8 repetitions, and he needed to use his arms to push himself up. After just 2 weeks on this breakfast protocol, he completed 14 repetitions, and several of them were without using his hands at all. That's a 75% improvement in 2 weeks. Now, I know what you're thinking. Maybe it was the extra exercise. Maybe it was better sleep. Maybe it was some other variable. But here's the thing. My father hadn't changed anything else. Same activity level, same medications, same sleep schedule. The only variable was breakfast. And the results weren't just visible in that one test. His grip strength improved. He could open jars again. He started taking the stairs instead of the elevator. He had more energy in the afternoon. His posture improved because his core muscles were stronger. Let me break down exactly why this breakfast works so powerfully, because understanding the mechanism will help you optimize it for your own body. When you consume 30 or more grams of protein first thing in the morning, you're doing several things simultaneously. First, you're providing your muscles with an abundant supply of all the essential amino acids they need for repair and growth. But it's not just about quantity. The quality and composition of that protein matters enormously. Eggs are incredible because they have the highest biological value of any whole food, meaning your body can use nearly all of the amino acids they contain. 4 eggs give you about 24 grams of protein and about 2 grams of leucine. But we need to get to 30 grams of protein and 3 grams of leucine to really flip that anabolic switch. That's where the Greek yogurt comes in. 1 cup of full-fat Greek yogurt adds another 15 to 20 grams of protein and brings your total leucine up to that critical 3-gram threshold. But here's where the magic really happens. The spinach, mushrooms, and blueberries aren't just there for vitamins. Spinach contains nitrates that improve blood flow to your muscles, ensuring they get the amino acids and oxygen they need. Mushrooms contain ergothioneine, a powerful antioxidant that specifically protects muscle cells from oxidative stress during the rebuilding process, and blueberries. They're loaded with anthocyanins that reduce inflammation and improve insulin sensitivity, helping to prevent that carbohydrate-induced anabolic block. The ground flaxseed provides omega-3 fatty acids, specifically alpha-linoleic acid, which has been shown in studies to enhance muscle protein synthesis in older adults. And the small sweet potato serves 2 purposes. It provides resistant starch that feeds your gut bacteria, which play a crucial role in protein metabolism, and it gives you just enough carbohydrates to optimize the insulin response without overdoing it. You want some insulin, just not too much. It's about finding that sweet spot. When all these ingredients come together in your stomach, within an hour of waking up, something remarkable happens at the cellular level. The leucine from the eggs and yogurt activates a pathway called MTO, which is essentially the master regulator of muscle protein synthesis. Think of MTO as a construction foreman that tells your muscle cells to start building. But MTO doesn't work alone. It needs the other essential amino acids as building materials, which you're providing in abundance with this breakfast. Simultaneously, the nitrates from the spinach are being converted to nitric oxide in your blood vessels, dilating them and increasing blood flow to your muscles by up to 40%. This means all those amino acids circulating in your bloodstream are being delivered to your muscles more efficiently. The antioxidants from the mushrooms and blueberries are protecting the new muscle proteins as they're being formed. It's preventing oxidative damage that would otherwise require your body to break them down and start over. The omega-3s south from the flaxseed are being incorporated into your muscle cell membranes, making them more flexible and more responsive to anabolic signals. And the resistant starch from the sweet potato is traveling to your large intestine where it feeds beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate, which has been shown to improve muscle insulin sensitivity and reduce systemic inflammation. All of this is happening in the first few hours after you eat this breakfast, and the effects cascade throughout the day. But here's what really astonished me when I dug deeper into the research. The benefits of this breakfast compound over time. It's not just about what happens in the 24 hours after you eat it. When you consistently provide your muscles with this optimal nutritional environment every morning, you're gradually reversing years of muscle loss and metabolic dysfunction. Studies show that older adults who consume high-protein breakfasts with adequate leucine for just 12 weeks can regain muscle mass equivalent to being 10 years younger. Think about that for a moment. 10 years younger in 12 weeks just from changing breakfast. No expensive supplements, no dangerous medications, no grueling exercise programs. Just food. The right food, at the right time, in the right amounts. When I shared this information with my father's doctor during a follow-up appointment, I expected skepticism. Instead, he pulled out a recent journal article and said, "I've been reading about this. We're seeing more and more evidence that breakfast protein intake is one of the most powerful interventions we have for sarcopenia, but most patients won't change their habits." That last part stuck with me. Why won't people change their habits, especially when the habit is so simple and the benefits are so profound? I think it's because we've been conditioned to believe that significant health improvements require significant sacrifice. We think we need to spend hours at the gym or follow complicated, restrictive diets. But the truth is, some of the most powerful interventions are surprisingly simple. They're just not the interventions that make money for pharmaceutical companies or fitness industries, so they don't get marketed the way drugs and gym memberships do. My father continued with this breakfast protocol, and I continued to monitor his progress. At the 1-month mark, he could do 22 sit-to-stand repetitions in 30 seconds, nearly triple his starting point. His walking speed had increased by almost 30%. But more importantly, the qualitative changes in his life were even more dramatic than the numbers. He started doing yard work again, something he'd given up entirely. He was playing on the floor with his grandchildren. He stood straighter and moved with confidence. At the 3-month mark, we went back to the doctor for a full evaluation. His lean muscle mass had increased by almost 8 pounds. 8 pounds of muscle at age 63, when conventional wisdom says you should be losing muscle. His leg strength, measured by a dynamometer, had improved by 62%. His doctor actually called in a colleague to show him the results because he'd never seen such dramatic improvement in such a short time without intensive physical therapy or pharmaceutical intervention. But here's what I want you to understand. My father isn't special. He doesn't have superior genetics. He wasn't a bodybuilder in his youth. He's just a regular guy who spent 40 years working in an office, eating a standard American diet, and gradually declining like millions of other men his age. If this worked for him, it can work for anyone. And since his transformation, I've shared this breakfast protocol with 17 other men in our community, all over 60, all experiencing muscle loss and weakness. 15 of them reported significant improvements within the first month. One of these men, Robert, is 71 years old and was on the verge of moving into assisted living because he couldn't safely live alone anymore. He was falling frequently, couldn't carry his groceries, and was terrified of becoming a burden to his children. After 8 weeks on this breakfast protocol, combined with basic walking for exercise, he's not only still in his own home, but he's renovating his bathroom by himself. His daughter called me in tears, thanking me for giving her father back his independence and dignity. Another man, James 68, had been told by his doctor that his muscle loss was so advanced he might need to start using a walker within a year. He'd tried protein shakes, he'd tried going to the gym, but nothing seemed to work. Within 6 weeks of switching to this breakfast, he was hiking again, something he hadn't done in 5 years. His wife told me it was like watching him reverse age before her eyes. These aren't miracles. These are predictable biological responses to proper nutrition at the right time. Now, let me address some common questions and concerns I've heard from men who've tried this or are considering it. The most frequent question is, won't eating this much protein be bad for my kidneys? This is a persistent myth that needs to be addressed. Multiple large-scale studies have shown that high protein intake is not harmful to healthy kidneys. In fact, some research suggests that adequate protein intake may actually protect kidney function as you age. If you have pre-existing kidney disease, then yes, you should work with your doctor on protein intake. But for men with normal kidney function, consuming 30 to 40 grams of protein at breakfast is perfectly safe and highly beneficial. The second concern I hear is, I'm not hungry in the morning. I can't eat that much food first thing. This is actually a symptom of the metabolic dysfunction that's causing your muscle loss in the first place. When you skip breakfast or eat a carb-heavy breakfast, you train your body to rely on stress hormones like cortisol for morning energy. Over time, this suppresses your natural hunger signals. But here's the good news. Appetite is adaptable. Start smaller if you need to. Begin with 2 eggs and half a cup of yogurt. Your appetite will increase as your metabolism heals, usually within a week or 2. Some men ask whether they can drink a protein shake instead of eating whole foods. The answer is, it's better than nothing, but whole foods are superior for several reasons. First, the act of chewing and digesting solid food creates greater satiety and more stable blood sugar. Second, whole foods contain thousands of beneficial compounds, phytonutrients, and antioxidants that you don't get in isolated protein powders. Third, the combination of protein with the natural fats in eggs and yogurt slows digestion in a way that provides a steady stream of amino acids to your muscles over several hours, rather than the spike you get from a shake. Here's another critical point that many men miss. This breakfast is the foundation, but it's not the entire solution. You need to maintain adequate protein intake throughout the day. Research suggests that men over 60 should aim for about 1 gram of protein per pound of their ideal body weight, distributed across 3 or 4 meals. That might sound like a lot, but once you start your day with 30 to 40 grams at breakfast, the rest becomes much more manageable. And you don't need to be perfect. Even hitting 70 to 80% of that target consistently will produce remarkable results. Exercise matters too, but probably not in the way you think. You don't need to join a gym or start an intense workout program. Resistance training, even at low intensity, combined with this breakfast protocol, amplifies the results. We're talking about simple exercises, bodyweight squats, wall push-ups, standing up from a chair repeatedly. Just 20 minutes, 3 times a week. The breakfast primes your muscles to respond to the exercise, and the exercise signals your body to use the protein for muscle building rather than just burning it for energy. Let me share something else I discovered in the research that blew my mind. The timing of this breakfast may be even more critical than we initially thought. Studies using stable isotope tracers to measure muscle protein synthesis in real time have shown that the anabolic response to protein is significantly higher in the morning compared to the evening, especially in older adults. Your muscles are literally more receptive to growth signals early in the day. This means that even if you eat the exact same meal in the evening, you won't get the same muscle-building benefit. This has to do with your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that regulates virtually every biological process in your body. Your muscles have their own circadian clock, and it's most primed for anabolism, for building and repair in the morning hours. When you eat this high-protein, leucine-rich breakfast within an hour of waking up, you're synchronizing your nutrition with your biology. You're working with your body's natural rhythms instead of against them. This is why my father saw results so quickly, and why the men in our community experienced transformations that seemed almost too good to be true. There's also fascinating research on how this breakfast affects your metabolism for the entire day. When you start your day with high protein and moderate carbohydrates, you set your metabolic thermostat to burn fat and preserve muscle. Studies show that people who eat high-protein breakfasts burn up to 150 more calories throughout the day compared to those who eat high-carb breakfasts, even when total calorie intake is the same. That's because protein has a high thermic effect, meaning your body uses more energy to digest and process it. But beyond the calorie burning, there's something called dietary protein sensing happening in your brain. When you consume adequate protein at breakfast, your hypothalamus registers that you've met your protein needs, which reduces cravings later in the day, especially for sugary and high-carb foods. This is why my father found he naturally started eating better throughout the day without even trying. He wasn't hungry for the cookies and chips he used to snack on. His body was satisfied at a deep biological level. Now, I want to be completely transparent about something. Not everyone sees results as quickly as my father did. Some men take 4 to 6 weeks before they notice significant changes. This usually has to do with the degree of metabolic damage they're starting with. If you've been eating a poor diet for decades, if you have insulin resistance or prediabetes, if you're on certain medications, your body needs time to heal before it can fully respond to this breakfast protocol. But the key word is heal, not fail. Your body wants to build muscle. It's designed to be strong and functional. You just need to give it the right tools and the right environment. Let me also address the cost concern, because I know some men are thinking, this sounds expensive. I can't afford to eat like this every day. Let's do the math. For eggs cost about 70 cents. A cup of Greek yogurt costs about $1.50. Spinach and mushrooms for one serving, maybe 50 cents. A handful of blueberries, around 75 cents. Tablespoon of ground flaxseed, about 15 cents. A small sweet potato, 40 cents. That's roughly $4 for a breakfast that could literally give you back your independence and quality of life. Compare that to what you're spending on medications, doctor visits, and the potential cost of assisted living, and it's one of the best investments you'll ever make. But beyond the individual benefits, there's a larger issue here that I think we need to talk about as a society. We have an epidemic of frailty and dependence among older adults, and we're treating it as inevitable when the science clearly shows that much of it is preventable. Sarcopenia isn't a natural consequence of aging. It's a consequence of inadequate nutrition combined with inactivity. And the most tragic part is that by the time most men realize they have a problem, they've already lost so much muscle that recovery becomes much harder. The medical establishment is slowly waking up to this, but the information isn't filtering down to the people who need it most. I've talked to dozens of men whose doctors never once mentioned sarcopenia, never tested their muscle mass or strength, never discussed the importance of breakfast protein. They were told to exercise more and maybe eat less red meat. But the specific, actionable, science-backed interventions that could change their lives were never mentioned. This needs to change. If you're a man over 60 reading this, or if you have a father, grandfather, husband, or brother who's experiencing muscle loss and weakness, please understand that this doesn't have to be your future. You don't have to accept decline and dependence as inevitable. The breakfast I've described here, based on extensive scientific research and proven in real-world results, could be the difference between remaining independent for decades to come or struggling with basic daily activities. Start tomorrow morning. Go to the grocery store today and buy eggs, Greek yogurt, spinach, mushrooms, blueberries, ground flaxseed, and sweet potatoes. Set your alarm for the same time each morning. Prepare this breakfast and eat it within an hour of waking up. Do this consistently for 30 days and measure your results. Do the sit-to-stand test today, then do it again in 4 weeks. Pay attention to how you feel going upstairs, how steady you feel on your feet, how much energy you have in the afternoon. Document your progress because you'll want to remember where you started. Take measurements, take photos, write down how you feel. And then share your results with your doctor, with your friends, with your family. Be part of the movement to change how we approach aging and muscle loss. Because the more men who discover this and experience transformation, the more we can shift the narrative away from inevitable decline and toward vibrant, independent longevity. My father is now 65 years old, 2 years after that phone call that changed everything. He recently completed a charity 5K run, something he hadn't done in 20 years. It's not just maintaining the muscle he rebuilt, he's continuing to get stronger. He volunteers at a community garden, works on his house, travels with my mother, and plays actively with his grandchildren. When people ask him what his secret is, he tells them about the breakfast. Some people don't believe it could be that simple. But simple doesn't mean easy, and it doesn't mean unimportant. The truth is, most profound changes in life come from small, consistent actions repeated over time. This breakfast takes maybe 15 minutes to prepare and 10 minutes to eat. 25 minutes a day to potentially add years of quality life, years of independence, years of being able to do the things you love with the people you love. When you frame it that way, when you understand what's really at stake, it's not a sacrifice. It's the easiest decision you'll ever make. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just read this and move on. Don't let this be another piece of health information that you acknowledge and forget. Take action today. Right now. Write down the ingredients. Plan your grocery trip. Set your intention to start tomorrow morning. Because every morning you delay is another morning of muscle loss. Another morning closer to the falls. The weakness, the dependence that you're trying to avoid. Time is literally eating away at your muscle tissue right now. But you have the power to stop it and reverse it, starting with tomorrow's breakfast. The science is clear. The results are proven. The cost is minimal. The time investment is negligible. The only question is, are you willing to give yourself this gift? Are you willing to believe that something so simple could be so powerful? Because I'm telling you, based on everything I've learned and witnessed, this breakfast protocol is one of the most powerful tools we have to fight sarcopenia and maintain strength, vitality, and independence as we age. It worked for my father. It worked for the 17 men in my community. It could work for you too. All you have to do is start.